You are listening to Kevin Bennett is Snarling.
On December 31st, 1967, intrepid daredevil Evel Knievel attempted to jump his motorcycle over the fountains at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, Nevada. The Caesar's Palace jump remains one of the most iconic moments in Knievel's career, and it is often cited as one of the most memorable moments in the history of extreme sports. However, during the jump, he lost control of the motorcycle in midair and landed hard on the pavement, skidding for several feet before coming to a stop. Knievel suffered multiple fractures and a concussion as a result of the crash. The crash was caught on film and broadcast on ABC's Wide World of Sports, which helped to make Knievel a household name. Despite his injuries, Knievel continued to perform stunts and jumps throughout his career, often wearing a white leather jumpsuit with a blue V-shaped stripe that became his signature look. Knievel's love of adrenaline and his willingness to take risks made him a legend in the world of extreme sports. He was a trailblazer who inspired countless others to pursue their own passions for adventure and excitement. Despite the many injuries he suffered over the course of his career, Knievel never lost his love of the thrill of the ride. Was Evel Knievel a thrill seeker? Yes, Evel Knievel was definitely a thrill seeker. He was a sensation seeker and a risk taker. He was known for performing dangerous and daring stunts on his motorcycle, sometimes risking his life in the process. Knievel was always looking for the next big challenge, and he would frequently push the limits of what was physically and mentally possible. On this episode, we will explore the exciting and sometimes scary world of thrill seekers.
Kevin Bennett is Snarling begins now.
How's it going? Here is a quote from Evel Knievel, daredevil and risk taker. Bones heal, chicks dig scars, pain is temporary, glory is forever. Of course, Evel Knievel is one of the world's most well-known sensation seekers, also known as a risk taker, also known as a thrill seeker. And that is the topic of today's episode. Pete Murphy from Galveston, Texas, emailed me a few weeks ago and wanted to know if I would talk a little bit about the personality trait of thrill seeking. So, Pete from Galveston, this is for you. I have in front of me a personality questionnaire that describes sensation seeking. So, this is a 13-item forced choice format questionnaire. And that means you are forced to make a choice, A or B, for each of these items that I'm about to read. And I'll read through them quickly. If you'd like to check out the scoring key or just look at the questions on your own, I'll put these documents up on the podcast website. But you must choose A or B for each one. And there are times when you will think that both apply to you equally or both equally do not apply to you. Or you're having a hard time deciding A or B. And that's why it's called a forced choice format, because you must make a choice. Otherwise, people would pick the middle if they could, right in between A or B, or they'd pick both every single time, or they'd pick neither one. But you're not given that option here. That's just how this personality test works. So these are 13 items, and you can either score very, very low on sensation seeking, very, very high, or, as most people score, it's somewhere in the middle. Number 1, I would like a job that requires a lot of traveling, or B, I would prefer a job in one location. Number 2, I am invigorated by a brisk, cold day. B, I cannot wait to go inside on a cold day. Number 3, I get bored seeing the same old faces. B, I like the comfortable familiarity of everyday friends. Number 4A, I would prefer living in an ideal society in which everyone is safe, secure, and happy. Or B, I would have preferred living in the unsettled days of our history. Number 5A, I sometimes like to do things that are a little bit frightening. B, a sensible person avoids activities that are dangerous. Number 6A, I would not like to be hypnotized. B, I would like to have the experience of being hypnotized. Number 7A, the most important goal in life is to live it to the fullest and experience as much as possible. Or B, the most important goal in life is to find peace and happiness. Number 8A, I would like to try parachute jumping. B, I would not like to try jumping out of an airplane with or without a parachute. Number 9A, I enter cold water gradually, giving myself time to get used to it. Or B, I like to dive or jump right into the ocean or a cold pool. Number 10A, when I go on vacation, I prefer the comfort of a good room and bed. Or B, when I go on vacation, I prefer the change of camping out. 11A, I prefer people who are emotionally expressive, even if they are a bit unstable. B, I prefer people who are calm and even-tempered. 12A, a good painting should shock or jolt the senses. B, a good painting should give one a feeling of peace and security. 13A, people who ride motorcycles must have some kind of unconscious need to hurt themselves. Or B, I would like to drive or ride a motorcycle. So now you've taken the 13-item personality test, and you may have some sense of whether you are a high sensation seeker or a low sensation seeker. If you go to the website and actually work through the scoring key, you'll come up with a score for yourself that is somewhere between a 0 and a 13, because you give yourself 1 point for each of the items on the scoring key, and you give yourself 0 points for the other answer options. So, for example, for number 1, if you endorsed A, for number 2, if you circled A, for number 3, if you circled A, those are all trending towards sensation seeking. So, for example, number 1A was, I would like a job that requires a lot of traveling versus staying in one location. That's more adventurous. That involves some type of risk, and it might even be thrilling in some ways. Number 2A, I am invigorated by a brisk cold day. Versus 2B, I can't wait to go inside on a cold day. So there's the thrill-seeking part with answer option A. And number 3A, I get bored seeing the same old faces. That's what a thrill seeker or a sensation seeker agrees with. Versus B, I like the comfortable familiarity of everyday friends. Now, of course, most of us, whether we're high or low on sensation seeking, we like seeing everyday friends. And there is something comfortable and pleasing about that. That's why it's called a forced choice format, because you have to decide between A or B. And that's a good example of that. So what do we know about sensation seekers? I'd like to talk about some of the things that sensation seekers are likely to do compared to low sensation seekers. For example, jumping out of airplanes. So if you have a parachute attached to your back, and you may have another person with you, like somebody that knows what they're doing, or you may have your own license and you can go solo. In either case, that is something that not everybody is prepared to do. Not everybody is excited to think about doing that. Swimming with sharks is another one, or any dangerous animal under the water. If you're swimming in waters where you know sharks are and you don't have a cage or any sort of protective equipment, can be a dangerous thing. So that's pretty exciting. That's what a thrill seeker, a sensation seeker likes. And of course, we talked about Evel Knievel already. When I was younger, I had an Evel Knievel toy, and you would wind it up, you kind of pull it back, and then the wheel would prepare to spring forward. So you'd pull it back and get him all ready. And I would set up these ramps with my friends and all these jumps, and we would let the Evel Knievel toy go flying across the driveway or in the kitchen if it was cold outside. But that's as close as I've come to being an Evel Knievel type character. You know, my own score on this sensation seeking test is somewhere in the middle, along with most other people. So if you scored between a 0 and a 3, you're considered very low on sensation seeking. If you score 12 or 13, that's considered very high. And if you're somewhere between 4 and 11, you're in the average zone. So that includes the what are called low scores, and then average scores and high scores. And on the extremes, you have the very low and the very high. And that's where the really interesting personality studies come from, looking at very low versus very high on any trait, whether it's this trait or any other trait. It's interesting to look at those extremes. Although that doesn't always paint the most realistic picture of what's happening with that human behavior or that personality trait if you're just looking at the most extreme cases. And those are usually the rarest cases, so you don't have that many people that you interact with on an everyday basis that score very low or very high on just about any personality trait. We're interacting with people that are in that average range from 4 to 11 on this, in this case, on this questionnaire.
He has a laser pointer in one hand and a double shot of espresso in the other. This can only mean one thing. You are listening to Kevin Bennett is Snarling.
So here are some things that we know about sensation seeking. Men are generally higher than women on this test. And if we take 1,000 men, 1,000 women, and we measure everyone on sensation seeking, there will be considerable overlap between men and women. But on average, 1,000 men, 1,000 women, male scores tend to be higher. And we know that sensation seeking declines with age. So there is a correlation with age across both men and women. But we know that older people are less likely to be thrill seekers or risk takers or sensation seekers. There's probably a reason why they got to be that age. And younger individuals tend to be higher on sensation seeking. And the highest general category, if you were to profile this, would be young males that are around age 18. That's your demographic profile of a sensation seeker. And these are the people that are doing things like riding motorcycles and jumping things and jumping out of airplanes and engaging in pretty extreme sports. So let's look at some of the things that high sensation seekers do and low sensation seekers are significantly less likely to do. We know that high SS, so sensation seeking, correlates with daydreams. So high risk takers or sensation seekers are more likely to have daydreams. So when they're supposed to be paying attention in class or doing a good job at work and being engaged in things at work, they tend to be daydreaming. So their mind drifts easily. They're more likely to use drugs. That includes all sorts of mind-altering substances, whether it's legal or illegal drugs, alcohol, pills, anything that will alter your state of mind. They're more likely to engage in that. They're more likely to gamble, and that includes all forms of gambling. So it's casino gambling, sports gambling, doing things online, doing things with friends, just making bets, going to other places where you can make wagers, like the horse track, the racetrack. They're more likely to play risky sports. So if you think about all the sports and leisure activities that we can engage in, some are pretty dangerous, and we know that just from looking at the numbers of individuals who participate in those sports and the percentage that end up going to the hospital for this or that. So surfing is smurfing. Surfing is a fairly dangerous sport versus playing golf, which is a pretty safe sport. And of course, golfing in the rain while there's lightning is dangerous, but I'm assuming you're not doing that. But if you're just out surfing, it can be pretty dangerous. If you're playing rugby, if you're playing football, if you're playing boxing, any sort of sport, martial arts where there's a lot of contact, aggressive contact, then you run the risk of getting injured. So that's a risky sport. Are you an overanalyzer looking for a show that speaks to you? Do you wonder why you often wonder about so many things that others find insignificant? Do you get frustrated when you evaluate your own life and can't decide if you should move forward, stay put, or cling to the past? For a few minutes every week, this is the perfect home for you, where we talk about what it means to belong and not belong.
You are listening to Kevin Bennett is Snarling.
They are more likely to show a preference for spicy and crunchy foods. So foods that have a particular flavor and a particular texture. Risk takers or thrill seekers, they actually enjoy having that in their mouth. So something like really, really spicy hot wings. Like I love chicken wings and I like hot wings, like traditional buffalo. I actually get mild buffalo because anything that's like hot or super hot, my eyes just water and I don't even enjoy the taste of it anymore. So I like something in the middle, slightly spicy, but not too spicy. I know there's a lot of people like me, but there's also a lot of people that really, really like atomic hot wings and the kind of chili peppers that just make your eyes water just from smelling them almost. That's a preference for sensation seekers. And then really crunchy foods. So something that could hurt your teeth if you bite into it wrong. That's something sensation seekers don't mind. What would be an ideal food for a low sensation seeker? That might be something like mashed potatoes with very little seasoning or gravy. It's something it's not spicy and it's certainly not crunchy. It's just kind of there in your mouth. But for a lot of us, that's actually comfort food. So what might be boring to another person is actually very comforting to others. High sensation seekers are more likely to have sex partners, or I should say more sex partners. They're more likely to try different and more sexual positions. And they're more likely to engage in sex without using any sort of protection. So if you just focus on that last one, it becomes a public health issue and trying to identify who's more likely to have unprotected sex. Well, it's high sensation seekers. So if you get two people together that are thrill seekers and risk takers, at least one of them, and perhaps both, will be friendly or agreeable to the idea of not using protection, and they will just go along with that because it's more exciting to them. So this is a group of individuals that, from a public health standpoint, you have to worry about more than if you had two low sensation seekers together who are enjoying a wonderful sexual life and a long-term romantic relationship or partnership, and they're using protection. So, and within the group of high sensation seekers, they have more sexual partners and they try more sexual positions. And so within one relationship, that might work like one partner is saying to the other, oh, let's try this, roll over this way, put your leg like that, and so on and so forth. And if you have two people that are willing participants in that, then you have a very active, sexually active couple. And the low sensation seekers will do things like just consistently have sex in the same way with the same sort of routine and sexual positions. So it's not surprising that a high sensation seeker would try or enjoy variation in all of those things. And then in the dating world, there's some research looking at Tinder, the dating app, and that among females especially, there's a large difference in sensation seeking in Tinder users. So it turns out that males across the spectrum of sensation seeking, there's not much variation in who's using Tinder. In other words, they're all trying to use Tinder. But just looking at females, because the risks that go along with Tinder and some of the things that might go wrong in a dating app, the risks are generally speaking greater for females. There's more variation in sensation seeking, in that high sensation seekers are much more likely to get an account on Tinder and then be more active users of Tinder, and low sensation seekers tend to shy away from it, or they're not seeking out these accounts and not seeking out the whole experience on the app. High sensation seekers also prefer more elaborate asymmetrical designs when it comes to artwork and just design in general, versus low sensation seekers who prefer simple, more symmetrical designs. So what kind of art does a high sensation seeker prefer? They like things that are really abstract with splashes of color and you cannot tell exactly what it is. It's a jolt to the senses. And that was one of the questions on this 13-item questionnaire. So if you go into a museum, what kind of artwork are you looking for? High sensation seekers find symmetrical, really concrete paintings to be quite boring. So if you look at a painting and you can tell what it is, and if I ask 100 people what they see there, I get 100 answers that are all the same, that's going to be boring for a sensation seeker. So if you look at a landscape scene, and you see a lake and trees and some clouds and the sky, and that's what everyone sees, risk takers don't really like that. They prefer someone like Jackson Pollock, where you might just have splashes of white and black and red and a little bit of yellow. And I ask you what you see, and you say, I see my mother-in-law. And I ask somebody else, what do they see? And they say, I see a boat and it's about to go over a waterfall. And I ask somebody else and they say, I see the emotion of envy, and so on and so on. So you get all these different responses. That's what high sensation seekers like. And so that is related to their the consumer choices that they make when it comes to museums. So high sensation seekers are more likely to go to modern art museums, and low sensation seekers prefer things like history and ancient art museums, things where it's more concrete what you're looking at. All right, and then high sensation seekers are more likely to send angry emails and texts and basically any form of communication. We've all been in that situation where we feel frustrated, we're getting mad, we're getting upset at something. We're so mad that we're going to send them a text, an angry text. We've all been there, and some of us actually type out the text or the email, and then we take a deep breath and we have a second thought and we say, you know what, I shouldn't send this. I should maybe hold back on sending this. And so you stop yourself. All right, those are the low sensation seekers. The high sensation seekers say, darn it, I'm going to send this, so send it. Who cares, right? They deserve it. I'm mad and somebody needs to hear about it. All right, and then a couple other things that sensation seekers do. They're more likely to listen to more aggressive music that's loud and just more intense. And this cuts across different musical genres as well. It's not just, heavy metal. The sensation seekers listen to all sorts of music just like anyone else, but they prefer harder and more intense versions of that type of music. And finally, they're more likely to view a given situation as being less risky than do low sensation seekers. So as they perceive the world around them, as they process the social and physical environments that are in front of them, they just see them as being less risky. And so there's less anxiety. They're more likely to be daredevils and try things that others wouldn't try because they just don't see it as risky. So for example, you go to the edge of a building, you walk to the edge of a building and there's no railing there, which I don't recommend. That just terrifies me thinking about it. But a high sensation seeker would do that and they would not perceive it as very risky. They see it as, oh, this is fun. This is exciting. Of course, I don't want to fall off the edge, but I'm not worried. I don't think I will fall off the edge. Whereas a neurotic individual who's really a low sensation seeker, just the thought of going to the edge is terrifying. And just listening to me talk about it is enough to say, please stop. I don't want to hear any more. To all the chronic overanalyzers out there, the feeling is real. Everything is dangerous, tomorrow is scary, and you don't belong here. Now what? Don't get mad, get untangled. In this super chill audio experience, we will show you how stories of chaos and change are best understood through the lens of psychological belonging. Each episode focuses on a gripping aspect of danger, deception, and desire, and reveals the power these forces have to shape who we are, for better or worse.
You are listening to Kevin Bennett is Snarling.
You know, I just realized that when I was talking about landscape paintings, I sounded a little bit like Bob Ross. And I said, there's a lake there, and a mountain, and a cloud, and a happy little tree. And I remember a few years ago seeing this chart that illustrated the paintings of Bob Ross. Somebody did some sort of analysis where they looked at what he included in his paintings. And something like 90% of the time, he included at least one tree. So basically, in every painting he did, he included a tree. And in 85% of his paintings, he had at least two trees. So there aren't that many paintings that have just one tree. Most of his paintings have two trees. And I think it broke it down by the types of trees, deciduous trees and coniferous trees, and then how many clouds, what percentage of his paintings had clouds, and it was something like 40 or 50% of his paintings, and how many had mountains, and it was somewhere around that same percentage. So I was reminded of Bob Ross and some of the wonderful paintings that he's done. I love watching him paint. I love watching his show. But I think when it comes to art, I tend to land on the side of the sensation seekers on that one, where I like the kind of painting that it may not be exactly clear what it is, and it's kind of a jolt to your senses. And Bob Ross used to say, so from all of us here, I'd like to wish you happy painting, and God bless, my friend. And I love that. And he was I think he was a master sergeant in the Air Force, and he was stationed in Alaska. And he would look out his window and he'd long for the days when he could just paint. And so he started painting when he was in the Air Force, I believe. And he promised himself that when he was done with his duty in the Air Force, that he would never raise his voice again, because that's what he spent his days doing, was just yelling as a master sergeant. So he vowed to himself to never yell again. And that's why he became known to the rest of us as this person on TV painting things in his very soft little voice, where he'd say happy little trees. And his show was on for 15 years, and it's still in reruns, and of course you can check it out on YouTube. So that's enough talking about Bob Ross. Here is a quote from somebody who spent some time in a sensory deprivation tank. They described it like this: immersed into a world of darkness and no sound, all I could hear was my own breathing and heartbeat. A sensory deprivation tank, also known as a float tank or an isolation tank, is basically a big box that has some water, and you close the door when you get inside, and it's completely dark. A lot of people get undressed before they go in to fully enjoy the experience, but you don't have to. But you open up the door. It's like a big pod. It's like the size of a tanning bed. And you find them in like big cities have these salons you can go to for float tanks or isolation tanks, and you pay by the minute, so you can get 15 minutes or half an hour or whatever. But some people use it for meditation or relaxation or just to kind of recharge. But basically, it's this big box that you open up. There's a door. It doesn't lock, so you won't get trapped inside or anything like that. But you take off all your clothes. You get inside. You close the door. It's pitch black, and you're sitting in 8 or 12 inches of a saline solution, like this saltwater solution in lukewarm water. So the water's not hot. The water's not cold, and you're kind of floating. So short of being in outer space, this is as close as we can get to weightlessness. And the idea with a sensory deprivation tank is that you are minimizing all of your senses. We cannot eliminate our senses like that voluntarily, but the best we can do is minimize them. So you really can't see anything, you can't smell anything, you can't taste anything. You're not supposed to bring a hamburger in there and eat it while you're sitting in there. And the only sound you hear is your own breathing and your own thoughts and If you splash the water a little bit, you would hear that. But if you're remaining perfectly still and perfectly calm, um, your brain is effectively just kind of spinning because it doesn't know what to do. It's used to processing incoming information, information that comes in through our five sensory systems. And when you take that away, what do you do? What changes with yourself? Are you just like a brain that's kind of floating in outer space that's not really connected to anything? That's how people have described these sensory deprivation tank experiences. But my question for you is, who would prefer them more? Would it be a low sensation seeker or a high sensation seeker? So think about that, and we'll come back to that answer. I was in one 25 years ago. I spent like 30 minutes in one because where I was living it was a new isolation tank salon or spa, and they were giving out free coupons. So people would come in and check out their new experience. So I said, sure. And I took the coupon and I showed up, and this was all new to me. I really didn't know what to expect. And once I got inside, I did feel a little, not claustrophobic, but I felt like, I'm kind of in this dark space and I'm not crazy about it. I'm not really happy. So it took me a few minutes. So I was feeling a little anxious, but then when I did calm down and just kind of talk myself out of it or talk myself through it, I found it to be pretty relaxing. Not so much that I would spend money and keep going back, but I could see why some people would do that, or some people purchase them for their homes if they have room and they have $7,000 to spend on one of these things. Hey, let me just throw out a movie recommendation while we're talking about thrill seekers and risk takers. There's a climbing movie that came out a few years ago, and it's starring Tommy Caldwell and Kevin Jorgensen. And these are two climbers who spend time in Yosemite and other places doing these insane climbs. And this is a documentary that really focuses on Tommy Caldwell and his experiences and the struggles and the challenges that he's dealt with, and adversity and grit and determination and all those wonderful things. And it's really inspirational, and it's just a cool look at the life of these two guys that are climbing and what they have to do day in and day out. And it's pretty scary too if you're scared of heights and spending time on the side of a mountain like they do. It's called the Dawn Wall, DAWN, and that name comes from the fact that the sunlight hits the part of the wall they're climbing first thing in the morning at the very top, and that's the Dawn Wall. Check it out. So to answer the question, who is more likely to prefer sensory deprivation tanks? Is it high or low sensation seekers? The answer is high sensation seekers. These are the risk takers and the thrill seekers. And just the very fact that you're in a situation where you do not have access to the outside world. Your brain cannot smell anything. There's nothing to smell. There's nothing to see. There's nothing to touch, to taste. At least you are minimizing all those things. The fact that you're in that situation is a completely novel and unusual, a very unique situation that most people do not get to experience in their lifetimes. So for that reason, it is a thrill seeker or a sensation seeker that enjoys sensory deprivation tanks. If you're extremely low on sensation seeking, there's a good chance that you will start to panic and you'll feel anxiety because suddenly the rug's been pulled out from under you and you're not processing any external sensory information. This is kind of a terrifying situation to be in. So this is definitely the domain of high sensation seekers.
This podcast was recorded and edited by Kevin Bennett in the beautiful foothills of Western Pennsylvania. Executive producer, Ann Hedonia. Artwork by Carvin Barnett. You can find Kevin on Twitter at Kevin Bennett, PhD. For email, Facebook, and other contact info, head over to kevin-bennett.com. That's Kevin Bennett with a dash in between.
If you are interested in more stories about psychology, science, and pop culture, check out my writing over at Psychology Today. Just type Kevin Bennett Psychology Today into your favorite search engine. As always, thank you for listening, and please remember to be good. I said be good. See you next time.